Welcome. Happy New Year, everyone. Welcome back to Deprogrammed on Unsafe Space. I am your host, Carter Laren. As usual, I am joined by the bad mama jamma, Keri Smith. Keri, wait, let me make sure people can see you and I didn't screw this up. Okay, Keri, say hi.
Hi, guys.
So we were lamenting that I'm a little bit rusty on broadcasting. It's been a couple weeks. We did put some episodes in the can and used those over the holidays, and I moved my studio. You've noticed the background is different, so I
like it.
I'm a little bit rusty on the tech, but it'll work out. Oh, and I should probably
a big
turn
delay.
on. Yeah, there's a big delay. And actually in the chat, people can tell us if they see the delay also, but Keri sees a big delay between when I seem to be speaking and when she hears me, and we rebooted a bunch of times and haven't been able to solve it. So I just apologize that it's there. We'll move on. Anyway, so yeah, if you don't see that or you do see it, go ahead and mention it in the chat if you want to. Let's dive in, Keri. Oh wait, I should see. I am rusty. Follow us at Unsafe Show on Twitter. We've got a Deprogrammed on Facebook page. We have an Unsafe Space Facebook page. You can go to unsafeshow.com. I don't know. Support us in the ways. The best thing to do is, frankly, just to share the content and let people know that you're watching / listening to us. We are on Gab and Minds as well, but and BitChute. But
do we have a Patreon?
How many other people are on those platforms? What?
Do we have a Patreon?
We do, but I'm thinking about taking it down because I only have there's not a lot of there's maybe one support. I don't know how many supporters there are because it's brand new. And well, now I hate Patreon anyway. And I happen to know who the supporters are. So I could just be like, do something else.
Let's move to whatever this thing is that Dave Rubin and Jordan Peterson are going to make.
Yeah, I just haven't heard anything about it yet. I wrote both of them, but I haven't heard back. I'd like to hear more about it, but we'll see. Back in the day before Jordan was famous, he would reply to my emails a little bit, but not anymore. He replies to your emails now, though, because you're an excellent writer and he likes to read your essays.
No, well, he hasn't responded. Oh, last year he posted a second essay of mine, but he's one that you can tell he's super busy now. He's on a nonstop tour. I can't even imagine.
Yeah, it doesn't sound fun.
Delay. This delay is really messing me up. I don't know why.
It's really screwing you up. Sorry.
It's really screwing me up.
I can't help it. There's nothing I can do to fix it.
It's always better if I don't look at you. Because I'm looking at you.
You don't have to look at me, Keri. That's okay.
Okay. Because your
no
mouth
one wants
is
to look at me anyway.
And then your mouth stops moving, but you're still talking, and it's weird.
Excellent. Okay. Well, thank you, Google Hangouts, for the excellent technology. And I guess you get what you pay for. So we do actually want to talk about something today, which is, New Year's Eve. A lot of people have had New Year's resolutions for the beginning of the new year, often about losing weight and things like that. But I was thinking about some of the most impactful decisions I've made in my life. And I realized that one of the most impactful things was purging toxic people from my life. And Keri and I came up with a lot of metaphors for this. I guess there's burning the Deadwood is what Owen Benjamin calls it. And I think Jordan Peterson actually uses that phrase as well, but more to talk about kind of getting rid of parts of yourself as you progress that are no longer optimal. Weeding your friend garden, pruning your relationship tree. Someone on Facebook suggested it's called evolving past emotional vampires.
Emotional vampires. That's a good one.
The origins of this. Yeah. Right. The thing is, if you're not choosing your friends consciously, then you basically have a bunch of friends by chance and by the serendipity of random proximity, which is kind of not a great way to choose your friends. But the origin for kind of talking about this today was really a phone call that I had with you, Keri. I'm going to put you on the spot. We don't have to name the person, but you were saying to me, you had a friend who, in my opinion, I don't know if you agree or disagree with this, but she was actively working to make the world a horrible place and destroying children's minds. So, someone in my book, I would say, is a horrible person. But you said, and you were complaining about her to me, but you said, the thing is, I like her. And I said to you, what do you like about her specifically? So why don't you take it from there?
So this is where we finally were going to disagree on something. I don't think she's a horrible person at all. I think she is very well-intentioned and believes wholeheartedly in this belief system that she's pushing. And I used to believe in that belief system. It's just that I now view that ideology as evil. I kind of see down the road to where it leads. And I no longer believe the lie of what it says it is. And so I feel like...
So let's talk about this. What is a horrible person then, Keri? Is it someone who has good intentions but is executing an evil plan? Is that still a good person? Is that it's not a horrible... Like,
well, it doesn't mean they're a good person.
Not to use the classic example, but, was Eichmann a good person because he really believed in Nazism and thought he was helping out?
I think it doesn't mean they're a good person or a bad person. It just means they're a person who's engaging in something, pushing something evil, something bad. I don't know. I try to separate the person from what they're doing.
Okay.
Is that not possible?
So when I say horrible person, I generally don't mean like doomed forever. They have to be horrible. It doesn't mean they can't change. But I'm generally judging when I say horrible person, I'm judging their behavior.
Well, I
who
do
would
that
you say is a horrible person?
Okay, I do that too. Michael Eric Dyson. Is that his name? Okay. I think he's horrible.
I don't know.
Who else? Kathy Griffin. I mean, just people who... I know.
She believes just as much. So Kathy Griffin's a great example because I think similarly to your friend, she probably knows your friend. They agree on the philosophy and they're both implementing it in probably a pretty genuine way.
Yeah, but I know my friend. I know she's not a horrible person. Yeah, I guess it depends on if you personally know them or not, and you feel like, oh, I can't put them in that category. Like, I like this person.
Yeah,
I just think she's misguided. Okay, so here's one of the most horrible people in the world, David Hogg. I put him on that list, but
actually, I would actually give David Hogg more leeway than your friend because David Hogg's a freaking kid.
True.
So he's an idiot and I disagree with him and he shouldn't have the platform he has. He has the platform he has by virtue of the fact that he happens to be at a school where there was a tragedy, which is not a credential, but is treated as such. But I agree, maybe he's a bad person or is making bad decisions, sure. But if you're going to call David Hogg bad, you got to call Kathy Griffin bad. And if you're going to call Kathy Griffin bad, you got to call your friend bad.
I guess that's the point is I shouldn't be so quick to make judgments about other people. Like, okay, so one of the things I do in Conversation Carter or have been trying to do in the past couple of years is obviously don't call people names when you're talking to them. Like, don't resort to name calling because it's lazy, first of all. It's childish. And it's not conducive to anything. It's never going to go anywhere if you both start calling each other names. It's just pointless. So I don't do that. However, when talking about someone in the third person, especially someone in the public eye, I have been known to call them names. And so I've had people sort of call that into question for me. And I've been thinking about it for a while. Like, I called Cory Booker a twat. And then and I probably shouldn't have. But
so actually this is a question. So I have a question about this. For me, calling someone a name, the reason not to do it and the way in which it's lazy is that it's not an argument.
Right.
But it is an opinion. And
it is an opinion.
It is like, there's nothing inherently bad about saying like Hitler was an asshole. That doesn't mean that's not an argument against him. You have to actually have arguments like, oh, he killed 6 million Jews. And like, there's reasons, right? But it doesn't mean you can't call him a jerk or call Cory Booker a twat, right? For some of his behavior. It's not a friendly thing to do. And you could say, well, I want to be a super nice, friendly person, but it's not wrong.
I guess what I learned from that is just that you don't have to express every thought that you have. That was my lesson from saying that online. Like, oh, I may have that opinion about.
That's probably.
Yeah, I may have an opinion like that about someone who's in the public eye, but I don't have to say it. But yeah, you're making me think about like the naming who's a good person and who's not. It's just a matter of, if you know someone personally, you've humanized them, so it's harder to write them off as a bad person. I feel like there are a lot of people in the SJW ideology who are just misguided, and they're trying to do what they think is good. They absolutely believe, some of them, that this ideology is the answer to racism and sexism, which is weird because it's a racist and sexist ideology. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't doubt what you're saying at all.
Just one second.
But
just one second. I have a dog issue. 1 second.
Are there dogs involved in this again? What's happening? Keri and her dogs constantly interrupting the show. Keri, now we're live, so I can't edit this out.
Sorry.
This is a strike against you.
We're getting off to a great
You're
start.
You're a horrible person.
We're getting off to a great start. So we had this conversation about, should I stay friends with this person, right? And you and I kind of disagree on this, on unfriending.
Well, so actually, before we even get, I'm not quite done with the horrible person, because there's one point I just want to make, and you can disagree with it, but when you say that there's two things that pop into my brain. One is the phrase, the road to hell is paved with good intentions, right? So I don't doubt that people are good intentioned. And I would argue that even some of the most horrible people in history may have been, quote, good intentioned. And the second thing I think of is a little bit less well known, but did you ever watch V for Vendetta?
Yes.
There's a scene where, so in the movie, V is killing people who had done wrong in the past. And he's not very nice about it, except for one person, for the doctor. He kills her, but he does it without pain. He does it kind of like almost like a gentle death. And she's apologizing to him at the end and crying for what she had done. And he says something. He says, "I haven't come for what you'd hoped to do. I came for what you did." And I think the way that I view judging people is not about what their intentions are. Because I guess if they have good intentions but don't act on them, that's fine. But if they're going to take action, I view it as their responsibility to be, I think you have a responsibility to analyze how your actions are actually affecting the world, and to be open to criticism of your actions, and to really rigorously like double check what you're doing. And it doesn't mean that, you'll always agree with what someone else is doing, but it means that someone may call me a horrible person because they disagree with me. But I don't think there's anything wrong with saying like, hey, look, philosophically, we're very different, and the things that you think are going to be good, I don't think are good. And that makes what you're doing horrible, which kind of, if I want to summarize, makes you a horrible person.
So you kind of agree with SJWs on this, actually, I think, because they like to say that intent doesn't matter. So let's say you they get mad at you, they cause a big stink, and they say, hey, like with Roseanne, that tweet, right? Okay, they're like, Roseanne, that tweet is racist, and she's like, well, I didn't intend for it to be, and intent doesn't matter. They say that a lot.
Well, so yeah, I get that, and I would say intent matters sometimes, right? I would say intent matters if you're going to accuse someone of something like racism, or like racism is a judgment actually of someone's. It is a judgment of someone's psychology, right? Mm-hmm. When I say someone's horrible, I'm not saying I'm saying they're taking steps to implement I mean, let's be honest. These people are taking steps to implement a totalitarian dictatorship. They are taking steps to implement authoritarianism. That's what they are doing. That's a horrible thing. And so anyone taking steps to do that, I feel comfortable kind of saying, look, if you're taking steps to do that and you're active about that, not just kind of passive, like, well, maybe I haven't thought about it, but I guess I'll vote for them. But if you're actively doing that, and as your friend was doing, actively, I think attacking children,
indoctrinating
that's
children.
pretty bad. In fact, it reminded me. Go ahead. You're gonna say something against this. Well, I'm gonna look something up while you say something.
Well, yeah. I guess I can't operate that way. I don't feel like I can operate that way because I still want to reach people who believe what I used to believe. I think that there are people in it, like I've said before, there's basically two different types of SJWs. There are the people who are bad actors, who have bad intent. I guess intent really does matter to me. The people who are in it to gain power for themselves and who know exactly what it is and are fine with that. And then there's the other type of person who's in it. And these are just roughly two different types of groups of putting people in. But the other type of person is well-intentioned, and they're in it because they think this is the way to fix the world. And so for me, I guess intent does matter. And those people with good intent, I think, can be reached if you don't call them bad people, if you don't tell them they're horrible. That's where we disagree.
Right. I get that. And so that actually gets to another part of the conversation we had, which was, what is your goal? And I would say, if your goal is to just go live your life, and you don't want to be an activist or advocate for things, then you should feel free just dismissing people that are doing bad things and saying, oh, they're horrible people, I'm not going to talk to them. If your goal is to be an advocate, I think it's entirely appropriate to think to yourself, this is a horrible person, but they don't mean to be a horrible person. And I think they're reachable. So I'm going to be careful how I categorize them and what I say to them, because I have an agenda, and that agenda is to turn them to away from the dark side. And I don't disagree with that as a strategy, right? But I do think there's still judgment. I mean, the reason you're trying to turn them is because you think that they're horrible on the path. They're on the path to horribleness at the very least, right? They're doing horrible things. Maybe we'll say that.
Yes, they're on the road to hell. The road to hell is paved with good intentions. They are on the road to hell, and and so
you want to save them.
Well, I guess so. Yes, I mean, I kind of feel like what if I had stayed in that ideology? What if I mean, in the first essay I wrote, I was talking about Daryl Davis. You've heard of this guy, right? He's a black guy that pulled like 200 people out of the Klan by befriending Klans members.
Oh, yes.
Okay, so was he an activist? I guess. Was he just trying to live the way?
I mean, I don't think you're a black person who joins the Klan to pull people out of the Klan without being an activist. I mean,
true.
That's not like a, hey, what do you want to do Saturday night? Let's go to a Klan rally and try to not get lynched. I don't think that's a choice that I don't know, but it doesn't sound fun to me.
It's also a Dave Chappelle sketch, but no, he did.
Yes.
He pulled 200 people out of the Klan. So I guess, yeah, if he's an activist, but another way of looking at it is he just believes in behaving in such a way or living in such a way that reflects his beliefs. So I think that's very hard to do, though. That's why it's easy for me to write off someone like Kathy Griffin and say she doesn't actually have good intent. I think she's a hard person. Maybe she has good intent, like my friend does.
You don't know her.
Yeah.
So for me, the danger for me here, I don't disagree with strategically being careful how you categorize people, especially if you're going to try and pull people out of the Klan or
pull people out of the SJW cult.
Right. I get that. I think the reason I'm giving you pushback is there's a danger in a complete unwillingness to identify evil. And the SJWs don't want you to identify evil, right? That's one of their philosophical points, is to not really identify evil as such. And so like moral relativism is part of their philosophy. And so I think it is important, just, I don't know. I imagine if you see a lot of people around you in your crew, let's say you're an SJW, and there's a lot of people around you in your crew. And whatever, your cult. And there's, right? You know, on the one hand, if there's outsiders saying you're horrible and we're not going to talk to you, maybe that just causes you to like double down. Okay. On the other hand, if there's no one in society saying you're horrible and everyone's like, oh, you're well-intentioned, it kind of gives you permission to just do your shit because you're well-intentioned. Someone needs to say, like, what you're doing is horrible and you're making yourselves horrible people. And I don't think you intend to do that.
Okay,
but
here's where
it's horrible.
Here's where I disagree. So I have no problem calling the ideology evil, calling their behavior evil, their actions evil. I think that when you call them evil, you shut them down and they can't hear anything. There's a great, when I was in SJW, and I still do like this guy, this vlogger named Jay Smooth. Have you heard of him? So he does a lot of video blogs, or used to, I haven't watched him in a while, but about racism. And so he did this one a long time ago that's like how to tell someone that they said or did something racist without calling them a racist, because it's a big difference. And from what I recall about that video, his point was you're going to get them to listen more if you attack the actions or the speech rather than them as a person. So that's sort of the same principle here. Is I absolutely think the SJW ideology is evil, but I don't think that someone who is preaching it necessarily is. And I think telling them that they are ensures that they're not going to listen to me.
Yeah, so I think we're in agreement maybe on part of that, which is I don't disagree strategically that telling people that they're evil is necessarily a good idea. Maybe you need to identify the leaders and say they're evil, because you're never going to convert the leaders.
Right.
But
the ones who I think have bad intent.
Right. I don't necessarily disagree that you shouldn't tell them. I just think that it's important to, I think people are afraid to label people as bad. And I don't think, and in their heads, I don't mean like externally, just like in their heads. There was a time in my life when I was a bad person. I was doing bad things. When I would argue that when you were an SJW propagating it, you did a lot of fucking damage in the world, and you were a bad person, and you've changed, and you're not a bad person anymore. But you were a bad person.
We're done here, Carter.
Now, I wouldn't have gone and said that to you. I wouldn't have been like, Keri, you're a bad person. Come talk to me. That wouldn't have worked. I get that. But it doesn't mean I wasn't thinking it.
Okay. Okay.
Does that make sense?
It does. It absolutely makes sense.
I know you disagree. I just want to make sure you're getting my nuance.
I understand what you're saying. Yeah. And I mean, I'm not super passionate about, my mind could be changed if we talked about this a bit longer, maybe. Maybe it is a strategic thing in some ways. And I don't think people hear you once you have, it's an attack on them rather than on their opinion, which, by the way, SJWs have enough of a problem being unable to distinguish between who they are and what their opinions are. Like they view their opinions and their belief system as their identity. That's why when you disagree with them, they feel personally attacked, even though you're not attacking them as a person. You could be disagreeing with their argument or what they've said or whatever. And they feel it's a personal violation. Like you've offended me and my family, and and the Shaolin.
We're dueling at dawn. Yes.
Yeah.
No, and I agree. And so tactically, I agree with you. So wait, I think I think we kind of got off topic a little bit, but not really. So we're talking about purging people in your life, and I think it's important to make a distinction between. Well, I think it's important to understand what your goals are, right? And this is something that is kind of related to what we're talking about, which is do you want, are you trying to convert people, or are you just trying to live your life? And I think also we have this binary thinking often where, well, I'm not friends with them, therefore I'm like condemning them as some horrible, like I'm condemning them as horrible and bad. And I think we need room for a third alternative, which I call something like benevolent indifference, which is, and that's like most of the people on my Facebook feed, right? It's like, I don't know, some of you are idiots, some of you are probably jerks, some of you may be great. But you're not close friends of mine. And you're not close friends of mine because you don't meet the criteria for close friends, which we can talk about what we think that should be. But basically, you're not healthy for me to be, like, it's not healthy for me to have a close relationship with you. And so they're in this kind of third category of like, they're not enemies. I'm not wishing harm on them, but it doesn't mean I got to hang out with them. And I think a lot of people are very afraid to have this third category of like, yeah, no, you're cool, I just don't want to hang out.
Right.
Like, whatever. I don't, I'm benevolent towards you. I don't have to like have only friends or enemies. There's the third category of people I know who are just like,
yeah.
Give me a category. That's my argument.
Well, I think I agree with that. I mean, we don't have enough time. It's impossible to be friends with all the people on our social media friends list, for example. Most of my social media friends, I accumulated from the entertainment industry and also social justice work, like a lot of nonprofits that I worked with my comics. So everyone was it was more like colleagues, like anybody that you've met professionally in any way. It was more like social networking, and you add these people. But then some of them, one of those people who previously was just a colleague, has become a really good friend of mine in the last year. Like sometimes those relationships change. So.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you and I were like.
You were in my Met category. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, no, I think I should have been, right? Because we had very opposed ideologies. Mm-hmm. We met each other through a business relationship. It wasn't even business. I was doing business kind of with Emily. You were just kind of like in business with Emily, right? And, we were Facebook friends and really didn't talk or anything. So I think it was correct for both of us to be in the meh category.
And
right?
now
and it wasn't until you posted your essay that I was like, huh? Well, this is really interesting. Why? She's super interesting now.
See, the same thing that lost me most of my other friends. Then you were like, I can talk.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, and so speaking of, that's the way Owen Benjamin in his recent video talked about burning the Deadwood. That's sort of the way he talked about it when people decide to leave you behind or whatever, stop being your friend, that it's okay that you're just burning off the Deadwood. And I agree with that. Right. When it comes to the question of like friending or unfriending, I typically let people unfriend me because it doesn't really bother me anymore. I mean, there've been a couple of friends that I've lost through this. Yes, that I considered close friends, and those hurt. But for the most part, the people who've unfriended me, it's like, it's not so much that I lost you, it's that I realize that you're not really a friend. if we're not going to stay friends because some of my belief system is changing. So what I think is hilarious, and I'm sure you've seen this because people do it on both the right and the left online, is when people post stuff like, if you believe XYZ, just do me a favor and unfriend me right now. And I'm like, no, I'm not going to do you a favor. Like, you need to find out who I am and unfriend me if you have such a problem with it.
I'm going to stalk you.
Why would I don't they call that emotional labor? Why would I do emotional labor for you? If you believe in XYZ, do me a favor and unfriend me. No.
Well, I don't have enough spoons to unfriend you.
Yes, exactly. No, you're gonna have to get offended by something I say one day and then choose to weed yourself out. So that's what happens is it's not so much that I feel like I'm weeding my garden out. It's like my garden is weeding itself out. Like it's like all the weeds are leaving. So let's talk about like real friends though, not Facebook friends. Because I think in many ways, like social media friends are it really depends what you want out of you. Like on LinkedIn, I don't unfriend anyone because it's very business oriented. And I'm sure there's like
super Marxist crazy people that I'm, friends or connected to on LinkedIn, and I don't care. And on Facebook, similarly, it's mostly meh people, right? But in real life, people I actually like have conversations with offline and talk to and meet up with. That's a much smaller set of people, and my criteria are distinctly different. And those people have a bigger impact in my life, I would argue, than some jerk on Facebook. If they're really having a negative impact, I can just mute them or not go on Facebook, which is mostly what I do, is not go on Facebook, right? So, but personal friends have a really, closer friends have a real impact on my life. What are the criteria that you think are important for people in your life? Maybe romantic partners, but also friends, like close people.
I'm
putting you on the spot, Keri. List all the most important qualities of.
For good friends, it's someone that is loyal, virtuous, in meaning like someone who doesn't lie. This is a lesson I've learned the hard way, how important it is not to lie and how important it is to be around people who are trying not to lie to themselves or to others. So they don't have to be perfect people, because nobody is. I'm certainly not, but just people who are broken people who are trying to put themselves back together. Those people, I think, make good friends. And people who are like you said, are open to changing their mind about things, are open to, are like self-reflective, like think about what they're saying and what they're doing, and if their actions match what they believe. Actively try to make sure they're not being too hypocritical in the world. I mean, I think we're all hypocrites, but someone who's a good friend is someone who's trying not to be one. I don't know. My friend Shelly says I'm the friend that you can call if you have to bury a dead body. I don't know if that's true anymore necessarily, but a friend who's like got just loyal and is there for you. And I don't know. Am I answering this right? You're kind of stumping me, because I do have, now that I'm answering it, I'm like, well, there are people in my life who don't meet.
I'm not the god of friend traits to tell you whether you're answering it right.
Right. Well, what do you think the answer is? What is, because I definitely have people in my life who don't fit those requirements.
Well, for me, it's definitely focused more on virtues that people have. I want virtuous people around me. So obviously not lying and cheating and stuff is one of them. Jordan Peterson has, let me look it up. He's got a quote. He says, make friends with people who want the best for you. That's one of his chapters in his 12 Rules book. I think that's a necessary but not sufficient condition. I think obviously you don't want to be friends with people who don't want the best for you. And just following that rule is great advice, because a lot of people, I think, are friends with people who don't want the best.
Yes.
Right?
So in that chapter, can I butt in for a second? He talks about this. Actually, I know people on the left make fun of him, but I don't care. Mike Cernovich talks about this too. He's got a mindset book. It's called Guerrilla Mindset. It's like a self-help book, kind of his version. And he says similar things, but in a different way, and reaches a totally different audience. But he also talks about making friends with people who want the best for you. And there's a really important part of that chapter where Peterson's sort of pointing out that sometimes you have people in your life who just want you to stay at the bottom with them. And so when you start to improve yourself, yes, if you start to try to improve yourself or to get, your life together or to sort things out, that those people become resentful and will try to sabotage you. It could be friends or family. And so you have to become able to recognize that and to see that for what it is, that not all friendships are built on, wanting good things to happen to their friends.
There is a lot of codependency that happens, and I think there's also a lot of unconscious behavior. So I don't think most people don't have friends that will admit that they don't want what's best for the friend. So that's something that you have to judge based on their behavior and their actions and kind of figure out like, oh, wait a minute. Every time I'm trying to improve in this way, whenever I say, for example, whenever I say like, hey, I need to stop drinking, they're the one who calls me and like talks me into going to the bar, right? Like they don't want the best for me. Like they're not acting in my best interest. So I agree that that's a necessary condition, but I don't think it's efficient. And by the way, it's Jordan and Mike, they both talk about this, but if you can look online, there's thousands of quotes from people about who you hang out with, like you are who you hang out with. There's one, what's the motivational guy? Not Tony Robbins. There's another guy who said, I think I thought I had his quote here somewhere, but it was, he says, you're Jim Rohn. He says, you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with.
Oh,
right?
wow. So, that's an interesting thought. I'm going to write that down.
Right. So there's like a lot of, and I don't think that's mathematically correct, but obviously, but we do know you are influenced by people in your life unconsciously and consciously. So there's some truth in that. For me, the close friends are people, I think you have to be able to admire them, and they have to be people who are, who at least some aspect of them is aspirational to you. Like you look at them and like, oh, like I want to be like them in these areas. And like, I admire these things. Maybe I don't admire these other things about the person or whatever, but those other things aren't like, it's not like they're a murderer, right? It's like, okay, the other things are, they're maybe on my level or like around my level on these other things, but on these things, there's at least some really admirable, virtuous qualities. And I think that's how you grow as a person, right? If you're around people who challenge you to be better just by virtue of their existence, then you end up becoming better. And it's very similar to a concept in business where, I coach a lot of startup founders, and this is something that I think a lot of people pay lip service to, but they have trouble doing in real life and business. Is I always tell them to hire people that are smarter than they are, because if you hire people, if everyone around you is smarter than you are, you'll be able to make better decisions than you would normally make, and like things will be better than just you, right? Yes. But a lot of people feel very threatened about hiring people who are smarter than they are. And I think there's a similar phenomenon that happens in friendship circles where it's, well, I don't want to be friends with that person because I don't know, they go to the gym every day and they're really admirable that way, and I'm trying, but I don't think I can, and like I don't really live up to that, and so I don't want to feel less than by being around this person. I don't want to feel like I'm not as good as they are, so I'm going to hang out with this other schlep who goes to the gym even less than I do because I feel better when I hang out with that person. And that is,
and then you can both stay at the bottom together. Yeah,
and that's self-destructive, and that's that's not the right way to choose your friends. And so that's how I think about it. I guess that was a ramble, but I think it answered the question.
I got a lot from it. I enjoyed it. I'm sitting here making a list of people and deciding who I'm going to move out of the top 5. Look at you. Like, wait a minute,
I don't think it's mathematically valid. Can I complain about something? Because I asked you, what specifically do you like about this person, right? And it spawned this discussion with us. But I asked that question. I don't mean to dilute the importance of that question, Keri, but I ask that question to people a lot when they say things like, "Oh, I like so and so." I'm like, what specifically do you like about so and so? And there's a couple, I would call them maybe red flags that are indicative that you're not really being conscious and analyzing your friends. And the two red flags that I see the most, and the response I hate the most, is when someone says, "Oh, he's nice," right? I hate nice as an attribute to describe someone, because usually they don't mean nice. If they do mean nice, and they're not a sadist way, okay, that's great, but that's a pretty low bar for a friendship. I mean, it's a hey, they're lacking this deplorable trait. Like, all right, whoop-de-doo. But that's not usually what people mean when they say nice. They usually mean like they're either conflict avoidant, which is actually hugely problematic and will cause bigger problems later and is inauthentic, or they mean they flatter well, which is like also inauthentic and a manipulative thing to do. So one of my pet peeves is when people describe like, oh, what do you like about so-and-so? They're really nice. It's like, you're not even thinking about this at all. Nice is just one of these platitudes. It's like this stupid throwaway word that doesn't really mean anything. And you're using it to justify a friendship you haven't thought about.
No, but some people are nice. And I also, what I mean by that is, because I agree with you, I don't think it's a virtue or anything. Like, I think in the past, I probably would have been described as nice. And there's something wrong with that. If people describe you as nice, you don't really have any opinions. You don't really stand for anything that makes anyone uncomfortable or that doesn't bother anyone.
You're conflict avoidant.
You're conflict avoidant and you don't really stand for anything. It's like, so
right.
Nice people, I'm like, what are you hiding? Or like, why are you trying to please everyone? Why are you trying to be a people pleaser?
Yeah, or maybe they're not even hiding anything. They're just, like niceness definitely falls into the meh category of like, oh, so you're just like, don't believe in anything. You just try and make nice with everyone. Like, that's uninteresting. I'm not going to grow from that. Right? That's not going to challenge me to be a better person. That's going to like make me feel icky.
And then there's a big difference
between help me.
There's a big difference between being nice and being kind. Kind is a virtue. I know very kind people. I know a few very kind people. It doesn't mean they're nice. I have a problem with that word too. It's funny.
Yeah. Yeah. The other red flag that I've got is, and I want to explain this one because in and of itself, it sounds fine. I'll ask and people will say, well, they're a good person, right? I'm like, oh, that sounds fine, right? But often we get into a conversation and it's like, oh, he's a good person. Sometimes he lies to me. He cheats on me. He stole from me. He once kicked my puppy. But like deep down, he's a good person. And I think like people go, they forgive, like, and I hear this all the time. We're like, oh, this person's really great. Like, what's great about them? Oh, they're really honest. Aren't we talking about how they cheated on you? Well, yeah, but I mean, other than that, they're really honest. I'm like, what? So they're honest with the baker at the store? Like, honestly, like, I would rather them do white lies on the phone and not lie for the big things. So there's this like weird kind of people just hang these attributes on people and then seem to not notice any of the behavior that runs contrary to those attributes. And I think that's really dangerous. If you catch yourself calling someone who's lying and cheating on you like a good person, you're stuck in this quagmire of not really thinking about it rationally. And I'm not talking to anyone specifically when I say that.
Can you hear my stomach growling, by the way? I'm starving.
No, what's going on with you today?
It's just it's a weird day. I'm going to get up and get something to eat. I'm kidding.
All right, go get some food. I mean, I don't even know what to do. I'll look see if we have chat questions.
I can wait. We do have chat questions though.
No. Hey, everyone in chat. Keri's just going to leave because that's what she's doing now.
I'm not leaving.
Apparently David Hogg is now an adult, Keith says. He was born in 2000. So, and yes, I know I've got an audio delay. You can just blame Google. I don't know what the hell's going on. So I can't fix it. We tried to fix it before the show.
So someone in the chat says,
one of the biggest problems the population has adopted is that if you disagree with someone's lifestyle, you must hate them. Yeah, and I think Lou's totally right. Like, it's kind of what I was talking about before, this kind of third category of benevolent indifference, which isn't allowed anymore. It's like, oh, you don't like XYZ, you must hate them. You must be a horrible person, or you must think they're horrible, and you're judging them morally. It's like, no, I don't think what they're doing is like, I don't think being a heroin addict is a good life choice. Like, I don't wish them death. Right. All right. So you didn't go away. So you were just teasing me. Okay.
Teasing.
All right. Well, so why do you think people don't purge their friend? Like, what are the barriers to purging friends and to like severing ties that you kind of know you should sever?
Well, and you and I talked about this a little bit before, so we might be talking about two different things. So for one thing, I don't unfriend like online. Let's go back to the online friends for a second. And some of these are people
Sure.
I know or used to know in real life and used to be real friends. I'd put it that way. I didn't unfriend any SJWs. Actually, let me back up. I unfriended like 2 or 3 of the most toxic ones that just because I couldn't read their stuff anymore. But for the most part, I try not to do that. Like I'm sort of, because I believe that, and hearing the other side, and I actually want to know what they're talking about and how they view things. And I'll tell you, it's crazy. It's like looking at 2 different realities. They live in a reality that
It's
I
great.
don't live in.
You like email me stuff sometimes that's like, look at how crazy this is. I'm glad that you're like this embedded spy in this world because I have access to like, wow, that's what they said, huh?
Right. But so I try not to unfriend those people. In real life, it's different. I think maybe people don't do it because, well, like your example of the person who wants to get fit, but doesn't want to be around fit people because it makes them feel bad about themselves or whatever. So that person doesn't really want to get fit. I mean, they might say they do, but they don't. And so if they're hanging out with somebody who encourages bad behaviors, like not working out or not, eating lots of crap, I think in a way they're doing that so that they have company in that bad behavior.
Yeah, I would say that the pain of feeling inadequate overrides their desire to improve.
Yeah, maybe.
It's stronger than the pain of being inadequate, actually. Like if you're fat, right? And you're like, okay, the pain of hanging out with healthy people is worse than the pain of being fat. So therefore I'm going to stick with the pain of being fat.
Maybe. Yeah.
I'm not a psychologist.
I think people just want company. And so they're willing to settle for friends who maybe are not the healthiest for them. I've certainly done this. Who hasn't? When they could be trying to be friends with people who are better for them, who really want the best and who push them. And I've also come to learn in the past year that we've talked about this before, so I'm sorry I'm repeating myself, but this concept of corrective love, corrective friendships, people who will tell you out of love, tell you when they think you're doing something wrong. And a lot of people don't want to hear that. They don't want corrective friends. So they don't, and the consequence of that is they don't have real friends, or they don't have people who are really going to tell them what's what. Like they're just going to have pleasers around them. They're going to have nice people around them.
They're going to have a codependent circle of acquaintances that aren't true friends. And it's one of the things that I really appreciate about, I'm not the kind of person that has a lot of friends, partly because I'm busy and I prefer deep relationships rather than, many superficial relationships. But the friends that I do have, like, I think all of them that I can think of are like, they'll call me out on shit. Right. And it's one of the reasons that you and I get along is I know that when we disagree, you don't just kind of say to me, okay, whatever, like you'll argue back at me, tell me I'm wrong. And like, that's fine. And I don't think I've said anything to you yet that's been,
pushing
super
it,
morally horrible. Like I want to go kill babies and you've had an intervention or anything, but
rein you in.
Right. But I think, but it's important. It's important to have, and actually I want to ask you about, you mentioned one of the traits for friendship being loyalty. And that's one of those words that I'm never actually sure. I'll admit, I'm not really sure what it means sometimes because I don't know. Is loyalty being the person that you can call to bury a dead body? Or is loyalty like, look, I'm loyal to you being a good person, but
I see. That's why I said that that doesn't apply to me anymore because I no longer believe that. Yeah, it depends on what you mean by loyalty. So I think of loyalty as, yes, loyal to you being a good person, loyal to loving you even when it
in what's your own,
being
in what
corrective.
your best interest is, right? Not just what you whimsically want to do, right?
Right.
Like,
Not just helping you justify bad behavior.
right. Not enabling, but saying like, look, you know what? I think this body needs to be reported to the police, and you really need to think about how you got into this situation.
Now I'm the friend that helps you go to the police.
Yeah. Okay.
Turn yourself in.
I would say, just for the record, I'm the friend who context matters. It depends on the body, and the reasons. So, okay. Cool. So you brought up something else.
Also, I think a good friend is someone who keeps you, well, this goes hand in hand. It's someone who wants the best for you, someone who's aspirational and to some degree is keeping you on your feet and keeping you thinking and moving forward. And whether that's through a great sense of humor that they have, or being really smart, or whatever those individual traits are that they might have, but there's someone that's helping you move forward as well.
Yeah, I would argue that I think a lot of I would argue to focus on qualities that are actually virtuous. So like I would argue that like a good sense of humor isn't really virtuous. It's nice, but you can like watch HBO specials for that.
No, it's just a trait. I guess my point is that they're using whatever qualities they have to stimulate.
They have to help.
Right, to help so that you're like if you're hanging out with people who are smarter than you, you're going to be pushing you naturally. So if you're hanging out with someone who's funnier than you, they're going to be pushing you to be, funny or what have you. But sort of someone who's
or maybe they'll be able to use that humor to like help change your behavior in a positive way if that's their intent.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. You're making, so the one thing we haven't really touched on, and I think we probably should because it's nice and volatile, is family. And I can share a little bit of I don't want to get too personal with it, but I have a daughter, and this issue of what family to hang out with and have relationships with really was really became a priority for me to sort out when I had a daughter. I mean, obviously I still do, but when she was first born, and I had to start thinking about raising her and having her around family and friends. The thing with children is children are, first of all, they're trying to look for a way to make sense of the world. And you can think of that as philosophy. They're trying to see like, what are the principles and values by which my parents are living? And you're their example, right? And so they're kind of looking to you to see, how should I live? But they're also very attuned to power dynamics, because they're trying to figure out how the world works generally. And they know that there's a world outside of your family, unless you are, isolated in the outskirts of Alaska in a hut and your family never visits anyone and doesn't have television or internet. They know that there's a world outside of you, and they're very attuned to power dynamics. And when you have people in your life with whom you think, we'll say when you have people in your life that make life decisions that are really bad, that you think are bad, and it's an unhealthy relationship, and you compromise your own values for the sake of getting along. And people, I think, mostly do this with family, right? So let's say your mom is a jerk or whatever it is, and she's manipulative and mean, but you still hang out with her. And you let her get away with it because she's your mom, and you don't call her on it, and you don't stand up to her like you would someone else. Your child sees your mom as winning, and your child sees that and says, oh, that's where the power is. The power is in that ideology. It's in that philosophy, not in my parents. They have power over my parents. Oh, and you actually, I think, are doing a real disservice to your children, which means that for me, it meant either I have my parents in my life, and basically I'm forced to have an acrimonious relationship with them because I would have to stand up to them and not let them get away with things in front of my daughter, in front of me. And I would have to demonstrate to my daughter that I had the power and not them, and that I wasn't going to compromise my values for them. Or I just decided, in my case, I just decided like, it's not really worth it. I don't get much out of hanging out with him, and I'm just not going to hang out with him. And so, and she knows that it's my decision. And so my daughter knows that it's my decision. And so, and she knows why I don't have a relationship with my parents. And I think it takes away her interpretation of them having power. And it's like, okay, my dad has principles. He talks about what's right and wrong. He tries to live by what's right and wrong. When I make mistakes, I apologize, but I don't overlook what I think are fundamental and critical flaws that are hurting me and people around me. I don't overlook them in family just to have a nice Thanksgiving. And I personally think that's super important.
I agree with you.
Tell me I'm wrong.
No, I agree with you. So, I mean, wow, you got kind of personal there. I was like, just wondering how personal I could get. But
You don't
I had
have
to go.
Get super
okay,
personal.
I had to go low contact with a family member, a very close family member. And I say low contact, meaning I talk to this person for a birthday, holidays, just like, hello, how are you? Friendly, nice. But I don't share anything personal about myself because there's no reason to, because this person is ill and will never be able to, any personal information is just going to be used against me, against anyone that shares anything with this person. Anyway, I'm trying to talk about it without being so specific. But the point is, I went low contact and everything changed and it got better, because I used to think that it was my responsibility to go there and to, like you said, to try and fix my family meant putting up with this behavior. And it took reading a couple of different, there was one book in particular that really helped me, but just about drawing those boundaries and saying, like, and sometimes you have to say, this relationship is never going to be what I want it to be. Like, it's never going to be the fantasy of what I want it to be. And this person can't be who I want them to be. And then you have to grieve the fantasy version of that person, like, let it die and just accept who this person is and accept what type of relationship you can have with them. And sometimes it's going to be this low contact version. And the reason I did low contact was because I didn't want to have to do no contact, and low contact has been working. And that's great. Some people have to go completely no contact.
I was able to do low contact until I had a child, at which point grandparents become unsatisfied with low contact. So it had to become no contact.
Well, I used to,
which is also unsatisfying for them, but they give me less hell because they,
right.
don't have a way to get to me, really. I mean, they can bother me, but
You're making me think of a very dark joke I used to tell, but
go ahead. Dark jokes are awesome.
Well,
wait, what was the phrase? Dark jokes are, there was that meme that I love. It's got a picture of Stalin, and it says, dark humor is like food. Not everyone gets it. Go, Keri.
Well, just that I was trying to, I was approaching 40 and I was trying to figure out if I was going to have a kid or not. But my reasons, I was evaluating my reasons. And my biggest reason was just so I could make sure my mom never got to meet her granddaughter. That's a reason. That's a very resentful, horrible kind of joke. But no, I get that. If I had a kid, it might be different. I might have to be no contact. Who knows? But yeah, we're not in disagreement on this. I think people sometimes stay too long, and because it's family, it's different than friends, and so and also because people, you're taught to, and I think for the most part, it's a great rule of thumb to live by, to honor your mother and father. To there's this idea of being there for family, and that family is not just the people that are around you itself. It's an institution. It's something that you should try and preserve. And so there's this idea of, like, sometimes that fixing it means keeping yourself in a really negative situation, when it's actually better for all involved if you guys find another, even if it's a more limited way to interact. So
Yeah. And I would strongly encourage, if people have got like family issues like that, therapy was, and TMI, therapy was super, super valuable to me. I'm a big fan of therapy. And, you know, a lot of us end up having what happens, again, I'm not a therapist, but what often happens is that as a child, we don't get whatever we kind of quote should have gotten from our parents in terms of relationship, either because of abuse or whatever it was, or neglect or abandonment, or people have got all different issues. And the what happens is that experience kind of gets stuck in your brain, and you end up kind of unconsciously wanting to get completion and fulfill that and get that thing that you never got, even as an adult. And that's why often you're driven to have these kind of dynamics with your parents, or sometimes with other people. You're trying to look to other people to get this fulfilled. And something that was really valuable to me, you talked about grieving, Keri. There was something really valuable to me that I remember my therapist had told me at one time, which was, look, you know, you wanted that when you were 8 or however old I was, or 6, right? Even if you got it now, even if like magically your parents transformed and that's what you got, and you were treated properly now, it's too late. That you is dead. That you is gone. That you is like decades old. It's gone. You can't get it. You've got to grieve that you didn't get it, and you'll never get it because it's too late. Now, what you get as an adult is different, but you can never fulfill that. Like that childhood absence is an absence that's unique to that child self of yours and that child brain, and it can't be fulfilled. It's got to be just grieved and be like, okay, like I didn't get that. That was a loss, right? And once you grieve, you can then become more focused on what you need as an adult, which I found personally to be much more satisfying.
Absolutely.
More TMI for the day.
Absolutely. So it's that grieving process, and then you can kind of get past it better and also start to see those patterns that you're talking about.
Yeah.
It's sort of what, to go back to Eckhart Tolle, which I do quite a bit, I guess, but it talks about living in your pain body, and like if you're living in that pain from the past, that you sometimes subconsciously you're seeking it out in the present, and whether it is to inflict that pain on other people or to have it inflicted on you over and over again because you're trying to like figure out how it could end differently this time. You know?
Yeah, I think we could do a whole show on that, because that's especially true, I think, with romantic relationships and also people's sexual choices. Often it's about reliving trauma, which is, I think, largely the reason that there's such a large kink community, is like it's trauma reliving, often. So
interesting.
I'm sure not everyone, but
yeah.
I know that's definitely a thing. You know, one thing before we go, I want to quickly mention, because you brought up, you alluded to this idea that you don't want to unfriend people because you want to see what they're saying, and I agreed with that, and I do. It's interesting to see what the other side is saying, but I will say, I think there's and someone alluded to this in the chat as well. I disagree with this concept of you need to be actual friends with, I don't mean Facebook friends or whatever. Or I mean like actual close friends with people of very different ideologies. And there's this idea that like, well, that shouldn't destroy your friendship. And that's an idea that I disagree with. I think that idea presupposes that ideas don't matter. And if ideas matter and have real consequences in the world, they should, like, those are moral decisions people are making, and compromising on moral decisions just because you want to be able to go camping with someone is or whatever it is you do as friends is not. I don't think it's giving due honor to ideas generally and value generally. So I would say your friends aren't there, at least my friends, they're not there to provide me with both sides of the aisle information. That's why I can read Mother Jones and Think Progress and on one side and Daily Caller on the other side. And if I want to hear something crazy, I can listen to Alex Jones. I mean, look, there's stuff out there. I can access information and opinions all across the internet from all spectrums. But if I'm looking for people in my life to help me grow as a person, those people need to be pretty well aligned with me philosophically, or else their idea of growth and what I should and shouldn't do and their idea of right and wrong is inimical to my growth. It's like the opposite. Well, I want to be a better person. Well, and SJW, if I say, I don't know, I'm trying to think of a good example, but like, being friends with an SJW, well, they were going to constantly view me as inherently racist because I'm a white male. Like, how's that helpful to my life? Right? That's not
Right.
That's not energy I want in my life, and it's not going to help me be a better person. Right? I need to be aware that ideology is out there and there are arguments, but I don't need to be like friends with someone who's going to be like viewing me as racist.
I think actually, so I saw that comment in the chat, which looks like it's been deleted now, which is weird. But I actually agree with it. But again, I think we're talking about two different things. I agree with you, and I agree with that comment, because the comment was more, I think, about social media. Like, don't unfriend like SJWs because you're trying to live your beliefs, and you're trying to show that, like, hey, we can have different ideas and still,
that I agree with.
You truly believe that. Yes, exactly. So that's what I think that person meant. And but in terms of close friendships, you're right. They're going to self-select anyway for people who share your values. I think if you've got the right kind of friends around you, if they meet those requirements that we talked about, because the people who want the best for you, I think it's going to be easier. They're going to be on the same page with you if they have a very similar worldview. So it doesn't mean that I don't like, there's like different tiers too. It's not just like close friends and then Facebook friends. There's other, there's other rings around this planet, or there's other,
there's a whole, you have a whole caste system for your friends, I believe. Right.
I mean, it's very helpful to sometimes get feedback. Like, I don't know, like my Hindu friend, like his perspective is very different than my evangelical friend's perspective might be, or it's kind of cool to have people around who are going to push you and check you in different ways. I guess I'll put it that way. But I do think in general, no, I couldn't be close. Obviously, I'm not close friends with someone who's an SJW anymore because I can't trust them. First of all, I think even if they don't realize it, their ideology is it's a web of lies, and so their whole belief system is it's an evil belief system. And so having someone like that who's keeping them very close to you, I think is it's bad for you. It's not healthy.
Yeah, no, it's not. It's not healthy. And you and I talked about this earlier. We should probably wrap up, but you and I talked about this yesterday. There is this, like, we've both been in relationship, and I'm now talking about romantic relationships, which are, I assume, at the top of your tier system of friends. We've both been in relationships where we kind of had feelings that we knew that we needed to break up. It was a toxic relationship, but like something was compelling us, and there was just this like inability to kind of end the relationship because there was this, like, even though we kind of knew intellectually, there was this kind of like something emotionally was keeping us tied. And the only thing I'll say about that is I don't have any we probably do a whole show on that, but the thing to remember there is it's always better on, like, it's always way scarier to break up or to sever ties than it always seems way scarier than it actually is. And once you've done it, there's always that, like, and I noticed this in my life eventually, breaking up with people, that I eventually had to remind myself every time I needed to break up. I was like, oh yeah, but remember how you feel afterwards? I'm like, oh yeah, that's always really good. It's always a relief. Like, okay, you just got to get over the hump and do it. And there's this kind of scary anxiety, and there's this fear of conflict, and there's this fear of like judging other people and all that kind of stuff. But it's worth the temporary pain of purging people in your life that are not healthy is is absolutely worth that cost is absolutely worth it for the value you get by making room for people who are healthy and contribute to your life positively.
I think people just have troubles saying goodbye sometimes, and with friends too, even. And it's because so there's a quote that a friend mentioned to me from a book I haven't read, so I can't name the book, but it was basically the idea that you have to come to terms with the fact that some people are in your life for a reason, some for a season, and some for a lifetime. And the ones that are in your life for a lifetime, people who are in your life for a lifetime, is a very small number of people. But for some reason, we all like to think that every relationship is a lifetime relationship. Well, it's not. Sometimes it's a seasonal thing. It's a short-term period of your life that you guys were close. And other times it was for one specific reason that you were friends with this person, that they gave you this insight or something happened because of your friendship. And that's enough. So it's since if we started with talking about weeding the garden, pruning your relationship tree, now we're ending with the people that are in your life for just a season.
It's just a season. Yeah. No, not all of them, obviously.
No, not all of them.
But it is important. Any final thoughts, Keri, or should we? I think we should probably wrap it up. It's we're a little later than we normally are. Any final thoughts on pruning your friendship tree / what was the phrase about vampires? Hold on.
Emotional vampires.
Evolving past emotional vampires.
Yeah. No, just that it's a new year. And I'll say this for anyone who's been unfriended, because a lot of people are experiencing like they've lost friends and family due to politics or the polarization. And anyone who's had a relationship end that they didn't want to end because of differing views, political views, what have you. Like you said, it's better on the other side. Like it's hard to go through that, I think, but obviously it's hard to go through that depending on how close the person is, but it's much better on the other side. It's very liberating. And so if you're on the left, if you're like I was, if you're a liberal and you're starting to question some of the SJW stuff and you're afraid of saying anything because you're afraid of losing friends. And I've had people write to me about this and say, this is the case. I'm afraid of losing friends. I'm afraid of losing job opportunities, or what have you. It's so much better on the other side, though. You will lose some of those friends, but it doesn't hurt the way you think it's going to, because it's like they're weeding themselves, they're pruning themselves, and you're going to make much better friends. Like in the past 2 years, like you and I became much closer. My friend in the entertainment industry who came out to me as a closet conservative, we became much closer. Like people start talking to me like, I can tell you things, and I have no one to talk to about this. I'm like, okay. But so you make better friendships. And I've met a lot of people online who are speaking out in one way or another against this ideology, and have become good friends with some of those people. So yeah, don't be afraid. If people are pruning themselves from your life, it just makes room for new growth. So
well said. I think that's a great way to end the show for today. So welcome back to Deprogrammed. It's a new year. We will be back on our regular schedule of every Thursday, I guess, at 11 a.m. Pacific time, which I think is 1 Texas time, Keri?
It's 1 Texas time.
1 o'clock Texas time, which if you're in Texas is all that really matters. So follow us at Unsafe Show on Twitter, share the content, subscribe to the show on YouTube, and let's see, Unsafe Space or unsafeshow.com. And yeah, I guess that's it. And we will see you all next week. Thanks for watching.